Both sisters knew perfectly well that they would never see Yak again. She grew fond of the chaplain, and he managed to take her to Spain so she could start a new life. However, what I just detailed happened in 2014. Until then, the young woman had stayed behind. I never saw her again, but we stayed in touch through social media. Perhaps when I return to Spain, I'll make time to visit her. Nika came to understand that her sister was the one who helped me the most. If it weren't for her, they would have never found me. Darlin realized that cremating her mother and preventing her from remaining in this world was the best decision. Her mother would have been doomed to whatever it was that I saw in the... And so began the story of the doctor. The same army chaplain became his sponsor in Rome, allowing him to study there. He built his reputation over time. I would like to say there are more stories about Mike, but there aren't. He never told me any more. Limbo is the name of a video based on 2 of his stories. Miguel and I lost contact in April 2020, during the height of the pandemic. He sent a message on WhatsApp saying he was taking some time to focus on his wife and daughter. My friend had been diagnosed with stomach cancer. The second trial. I don't know. I only hope he's doing well. All this talk about my WhatsApp group makes me want to return. Once I get a new phone, I'll send a message to be added back. Who knows, maybe there will be new interesting members. The chosen student. Before starting the story, we need to know a little about the protagonist. In Mike Gonzalez's accounts, I mentioned that there was a WhatsApp group. To moderate it, I selected trusted people for the administration. Alberto Ceballos was a golden moderator. Beto was one of the first Taringa users to follow me and read every single one of my stories as soon as I published them. What a great time 2015 was. I won't fall into the sin of imagining the past was better. I live in the present, but those memories do bring nostalgia. Well, back to the topic. If I don't digress, as that's not the point, Beto is passionate about the paranormal. His father was a renowned lawyer and also obsessed with supernatural investigations. The Ouija board, spiritism, Cardicism, shamanism, faith healing, he researched and read about each of these, and this fascination was inherited by my friend Beto. Alberto is a civil engineer, but it wasn't his first choice. Symbolic family pressure forced him to study law on his own accord. He spent 3 years in law school before realizing it wasn't for him and never would be. He gathered his courage, confronted his father, and switched to engineering. It was at the University of Quito where engineer Ceballos had a paranormal encounter. My story isn't long, but it has all the ingredients of a horror story. It's short yet powerful. As my Argentine friends say, at the university, there was a courtroom-themed space, set up like a real tribunal. This mock court was used for forensic practice by students. In procedural law courses, they simulated trials, civil, criminal, commercial, or labor hearings. It was structured like a Greek forum. In the center were the seats for judges, prosecutors, and the plaintiff, and in a semicircle, a bunch of desks for the students. As final exams for the second semester approached, procedural law was the subject I struggled with the most. On top of that, the final exam involved an acting exercise in which students had to explain legal concepts and principles. I decided to dedicate my free time to practicing in the courtroom to prepare for my exam. I wasn't the only one with that idea. There were small groups rehearsing their presentations and a few individuals like me practicing alone in the courtroom. One hot afternoon in that classroom, something began. When speaking with a young woman, without exaggeration, she knew the entire subject matter inside and out in less than a week. It became a routine to find her there in the afternoons. This girl spoke to me like any other young woman in her 20s. She claimed her name was Martha and that she was very close to graduating as a lawyer. Martha gave great advice on the subject: attitudes and posture when arguing a case. I took my exam, passed, rebelled, and finally changed my major, switching to another faculty within the same university. A year or a year and a half passed. I earned a scholarship and joined an administrative internship. Every place has its secrets, some more, some less, that never come to light, and the university was no exception. One afternoon, a group of students came to my office demanding access to the courtroom security footage. The courtroom was supposed to have a central camera recording the mock trials, mainly to create study guides for future students. However, they wouldn't hand over the footage so easily. The head professor of the course had to formally request the tapes in writing. However, the students didn't want to take the tapes with them. They only wanted to verify a single minute of footage, and that was it. The students claimed they had been speaking with a girl for several days, a young woman who kindly guided them through the course material. Then, one afternoon, in the middle of their practice sessions, the girl suddenly vanished before their very eyes. She had disappeared as if by magic. Victor Hugo was a man in his 40s who looked like he was 30, a bohemian working as The university's non-teaching staff was known for being friendly and talkative. There were never any awkward silences with them. In other words, Victor Hugo was the type of person who could engage in conversation from any angle. He started laughing and asked rhetorically, "Has Martita shown up for you guys already?" He didn't wait for an answer. Just like that, he quickly sent them home. There was a videotape with a short note from the professor at the bottom. "Marta, Marta, Marta. My Marta. The girl who helped me without saying a word." A few days later, I went to the courtroom. Nostalgia weighed heavily on my chest, but that feeling vanished the moment I saw Marta sitting at one of the desks. We exchanged greetings, had a brief chat in the center of the classroom, and in the blink of an eye, Marta disappeared. I swear she vanished right in front of my eyes. I was frozen, stiff as a rock. The moment my body responded, I bolted out of there, ran breathless to my administrative cubicle, and went straight to Victor Hugo to demand the courtroom security footage. The video clearly showed two people. One was me and the other was Marta. Barely half a meter apart, and then, in an instant, poof, I was standing alone in the middle of the room. Victor forced me to sit in a chair and brought me a glass of water with sugar to help with my nerves. "Martita isn't evil," he said. "She's been trapped here for years and can't leave. That girl got really sick. Out of nowhere, she started fainting constantly. Her family took her to the hospital, and that's where they discovered she had a brain tumor. It wasn't a good diagnosis. She died 2 months later. And not long after, people started seeing her where you just did. This happened over 20 years ago." Once again the tape. I turned off the console and went home to tell my father about a WhatsApp message. And about Argentina's national football team. Simply everything. I know many will say there are more important things than sports, and that's true. But understand this. Argentina is a country with many problems. We jump from one crisis to another, and it feels like there's never an escape. It's complicated to explain, but with every victory of the national team, it feels like a small triumph. Not just for the football squad but for the entire nation. Totality. I still remember the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. Every match, every gathering, the joy that filled the air, everyone happy, cheerful. I don't know, seeing your people so full of joy is an indescribable feeling, like your chest swells with something beautiful. You simply wouldn't understand unless you lived it. La Scalonita made history, but it was a long journey that started back in 2018 when Scaloni began a new process. The team went through dark times, years without trophies, long droughts. It's always darkest before the dawn. They endured, and then the victories came, Copa America Finalissima and the World Cup. Anyway, let's go back to the winter of 2019, the Copa America final between Peru and Brazil, if I remember correctly. It was Sunday, July 8th at night. Tito, John, Fatsu, my brother Gonzalo, and I were sitting at the table at home watching the final, with a red wine mixed with Coca-Cola, bread, and a platter of cold cuts to enjoy the game. By then, I had already moved from Taringa to Facebook since 2017 when the duo started. Back then, I was very reluctant to say that I was a writer and that Abacat was my pseudonym. I still am, but not as much as before. That was my peak era, sharing certain messages and stories. Some people would just throw the story at you raw and unfiltered, while others were more reserved and preferred a personal dialogue. Because of that, I decided to bring an old phone back to life, bought a SIM card and set up a WhatsApp exclusively for horror stories. In other words, I had 2 phones, one for personal use and another for stories. While we were watching the final, I was chatting with a girl from southern Argentina about a strange event happening in her house. A dog and a series of eerie incidents that began after the animal was adopted. At the same time, I was talking to my dear friend Antonio, the genius of horror videos, about how great the girl's story was. Then, out of nowhere, I received a message on my horror stories phone, just a single dry word. "Hello." The message came from my personal phone. I thought someone was playing a prank on me, assuming that one of my friends had grabbed my phone and sent the message. But that was impossible. Both devices were on the table. A few moments later, another message came in. "Aren't you going to respond?" That's when I started to feel a mix of curiosity and unease. I picked up the phone, checked it, and once again, the message had come from my personal phone. I checked my personal phone and there was no sent message. Pretty weird. I didn't say anything to my friends about what was happening. Then another message appeared. "You won't answer me?" And then it wrote, "There's Facundo, Ramon, Gonzalo, Jonathan, and you." At that moment, my friends and my brother finally believed me. Gonzalo grabbed the phone and sent a voice message insulting it. Immediately, a reply message arrived. It was completely unintelligible, just a string of meaningless characters with no coherence. I turned off the phone, removed the SIM card, factory reset it, and went back to watching the match. Just one of those things that happen.